everybody, and welcome into Clearing the Benches, your one-stop shop for daily fresh hockey content. If you go ahead and hit your subscription button right now, every single day we'll bring you in a new hockey video to enjoy. Well, today is going to be a very fun video. Today we are doing the Patrick Kane prediction edition. The season's over for the Detroit Red Wings and Patrick Kane, and earlier this season I had done a video and I had thought that Patrick Kane had picked his team a little bit too early. I thought that he was going to pick a team that had a little bit more favorable playoff odds. However, I was wrong about that. Kane had an awesome year this year for the Red Wings. I think he had like 47 points in 50 games. And really, if it wasn't for that Dylan Larkin injury that took him out for like those 7 games down the stretch, where I don't think the Red Wings had a point in any of those games, I really think that if Larkin had just played in either a few of those games, that Detroit would have been in the playoffs for sure. So as far as Patrick Kane and his abilities go, you know, he's like around 35 years old. But again, this year, he was almost a point-a-game player. And, you know, nothing for nothing, but the Detroit Red Wings are not exactly an offensive juggernaut when you're looking at, you know, scoring in the NHL. So today we're going to try to predict where Patrick Kane signs. And initially, I think he's going to take a few weeks off. I personally think he's going to wait at the very least until the playoffs are over. Probably when the draft is over, and then the draft and free agency are like, you know, right back to back. So he may wait until, you know, middle of July, maybe, you know, July 4th. He makes a big celebration announcement. But I think he will wait until the very least, probably, you know, mid-July before he makes his announcement. However, he may have his mind made up already. I know that he said that he's going to have his agent talking to the teams and talking about the possibilities. So I'm just going to go out on a limb. First of all, he's played on 3 of the original 6 teams. And when you look at the teams he was on, I don't think there's any chance he goes back to the Rangers at all. I think the Rangers have too many kids they want to bring up through the system. They've got just too many guys almost for their roster, and I think the Rangers might even be paring down just a little bit. So I don't think Kane's going back to the Rangers at all. When you look at the possibility of him going back to Detroit, didn't sound like it from that postseason presser. It just kind of seems like, you know, he's putting it all on his agent so that he doesn't have to answer the questions about where he might possibly end up. But, however, look at the year he had this year again. You know, everybody talked about the big hookup with DeBrincat, and obviously it worked out for those two. Again, if Dylan Larkin hadn't gotten hurt, they would have been in the playoffs, and we'd be talking about them more than, you know, we'd be talking about Kane's playoff possibilities versus where he's going to be next year. As far as, you know, Detroit, he had a chance at winning there this year. You know, they almost made the playoffs. You missed it by a point or, you know, 1 or 2 wins, and you'd have been in the playoff. But I think as far as Detroit goes, I think it was going to be a one-and-done situation, and maybe he thought him and DeBrincat could get them hot in the playoffs. But as far as the Detroit Red Wings go, I'm going to say not. The other big obvious name everybody always talks about, oh, he'll go back to Chicago. I don't think he's going back to Chicago. You know, they've got a, you know, obviously they've got Bedard. You know, if somehow they were to win the draft lottery again this year, now you got Bedard with Celebrini and then some of the other kids that they've already got on their roster that are starting to play well. It's just too far from a playoff dream. And I think Kane wants to be in the playoffs for sure next season. I think he was pretty much counting on it this year with Detroit. And then again, that Larkin injury just derailed the whole train. So as far as going back to Chicago, to Bedard, and kind of jumpstart the rebuild, I just don't see it. Then I start to get into some other situations here. Let's get into another lesser team, in my opinion. I know they've got big names on their roster, but again, they were scrambling and they wound up missing the playoffs. You know, Pittsburgh, maybe he would want to go back and play on that, like, all-star lineup, and maybe he thinks he could be, you know, the ingredient in the sauce that makes it a, you know, ribbon winner. But as far as Look at the lineup, you know, Crosby, Malkin, Letang, Karlsson. You throw Kane in there, and you might be able to, you know, you'd have two pretty good power play units, but again, you would have a very, very aged team. And I hate to say it, but all of these other kids are just a little step ahead, it seemed like, where the Penguins were this year. When I watched some of their games, and I saw them up close when they came out to the mullet, they just looked a little slow. They kind of just, they didn't really look like they had that playoff, you know, pep in their step. So I would doubt that Kane would be looking at the Penguins as an opportunity. You know, and the other thing is, people would say, oh, he could replace Gensel in Pittsburgh. Again, I just think that team is just too old. You know, another team, you look at older team that he could possibly replace a guy, depending on how Dallas does this year in the playoffs. I know they lost last night to Vegas, but as far as, you know, Pavelski and Seguin have got a lot of mileage on their skates. Sagan's been banged up a little bit. And then, you know, Pavelski's just an older guy. Win, lose, or draw. If Pavelski were to say, I'm done, I'm skating off into the sunset, you know, they've got a pretty stacked lineup in Dallas. They had a great year this year. And, you know, Texas is one of those places in America that's got better taxes. So, you know, it would be a possibility. But again, I just don't see it happening down in Dallas. There's a couple of other teams that I think he would look at hard before he would look at Dallas. As far as looking at like another Big Six team, the Toronto Maple Leafs, I'm pretty sure they're going to break up that Big Four this year. I think Tavares' contract comes off of the roster books, but as far as that, too much pressure. And again, that's depending on what happens this year with the Maple Leafs. You know, if they finally get off the schneid and they win a Stanley Cup for the first time in, 57 years, you know, hey, then things might be looking good. But again, you're going into Canada, and the tax situation there versus the U.S. is just not as good. So, and I also think if Toronto did not win the Cup this year, it would just all be on Kane to win the Cup next year. And I just think he wants to go and play on a fun team. I think he just wants to be himself. I don't think everybody wants... You know, I don't think every game outside his locker stall, he wants to be answering the question, are you guys going to win the Stanley Cup this year? So I don't think Toronto would be an option for them. And then when I look at the other, you know, teams I look at here, and you've got, you know, perennial Cup contenders in the Florida Panthers and now the Vegas Golden Knights. And, you know, I'm just going to go ahead and say it. After the Mark Stone thing happened this year with the LTIR, Kelly McCrimmon is like a magician standing over a top hat when he keeps pouring guys into the, you know, bucket, and somehow it never overflows. So I could see, you know, those are two teams that are plug and play. You're almost guaranteed you're going to be in the playoffs, and you're almost guaranteed you're going to have a decent seed. It didn't work out that way for Vegas this year, but again, they were stung with some big-time injuries for a while. But again, Nevada and Florida both have good tax situations. Florida would be another team I could look at and say, you know, would he want to play with Tkachuk and Barkov? You know, they've got good D out there. You know, you got Bobrovsky in the net. Who knows? You know, maybe if Florida wins the Cup this year, Bobrovsky takes the Cup and he, you know, skates off into the sunset. Maybe he's seen enough rubber come his way that he wants to just, you know, make a quick exit if they happen to win the Cup. But Florida, another good tax situation. You got a team that's loaded. You're almost guaranteed you're going to make the playoffs. So I was looking at those as being a possibility. And after I tell you the team that I think he's going to go to, I think these two would be, you know, second and third. I think Florida would be his second option. And I think Vegas, if somehow they could make it work with their roster, he would be another big option for them. But I am about to reveal that I think Patrick Kane is going to go to the Buffalo Sabres. And now I think people can look at me and say, oh, you don't know what you're talking about. But let me tell you, there's a lot about Kane and Buffalo that intermingle that makes a lot of sense. Okay, Kane's from Buffalo. Yesterday, they just went back to the well and they bought Lindy Ruff back. And guess who was the coach of the Buffalo Sabres when Patrick Kane was a little boy growing up in Buffalo, watching the games on TV? Lindy Ruff. So he's got a very, very, good impression. Since you're a little kid, this is a guy that you've looked up to. And now as a man, you're 35, 36 years old, you could possibly go back and play along, with him, for him, have him coach you. And also the other reasons, and these are really big, big reasons why I think Kane is going to go back to, or he'll go back to Buffalo, because he's from Buffalo. Obviously never played for the Sabres, but I think he is going to sign with the Sabres. And again, you look at, first of all, the talent that they've already got on that team. Everybody thought for sure, everybody went to Vegas before the season started and said, yes, Buffalo's going to make the playoffs. And again, they lost a lot of games that they shouldn't have lost. They gave up a lot of goals this year. And unfortunately for Don Granato, who I think will be back in the NHL coaching sooner than later, it just didn't work out for him up in Buffalo. And when you look at the lineup that they've already got, I mean, my goodness, you've got guys like TNT, JJ Peterka, Dylan Cousins. And on the back end, come on, that back end is pretty elite. You've got Power, Dahlin, and Byrem. Those are elite skaters. Maybe their defensive work needs a little bit of, polishing, but when you're a great skater and all it's a matter of is being in position, that's 90% of the battle right there. So I think as far as Ruff goes, and Ruff likes to play a defensive system. I'm pretty sure he likes that 1-3-1. I may be wrong, but he likes to slow it down coming through the center ice zone. He likes everybody to get either you got to skate around a guy or you got to skate through a guy. He likes to muddy up that center ice zone. And when I look at the kids that he's got on the back end, let me tell you, these kids are all elite skaters. And then when you look at the prospect pool, when you go around on the internet, most of the draft pundit experts have the Buffalo Sabres with the #1 NHL prospect pool. They're loaded. And when you look at the kids that they've got coming up, you got Zach Benson, Yuri Kulich is going to be coming up, Matthew Savoy. Listen, we already saw Devin Levi. Yeah, it didn't work out, but he's a kid, and then they threw him into the fire. And yeah, maybe he got a little burned, but guess what? Those wounds are going to heal up, and I think a guy like Devin Levi is going to be good. You got guys like Isaac Rosen. You have Noah Osling, a left wing. They have got some serious talent coming up, and again, with like Benson, Savoy, Kulich. Kulich, I think, is only like 20 years old. He's about 6 foot, 185 pounds. He had 46 points in 62 games down in Rochester this year. So listen, the kid's only 20 years old. You get him another year of seasoning under his belt. Maybe he has a good development camp, training camp. You send him back to the AHL, and maybe by mid-season he's back playing in the NHL. But again, when I looked at the guys that Buffalo's got, first of all, on their current roster, and then who they've got coming up through the pipeline, it just tells me that this makes the most sense. And, at his age, I really think that probably Kane I'm thinking this is probably going to be his last stop. And I think he's probably going to want to give himself a little term. And I think maybe this would be like a 3-year deal. And maybe if they, want to, I don't know what he's going to take. Maybe he gives him a hometown discount. He wants to play for $3 million a year. And maybe he does like, a 3-year, $9 million deal, 3 years, $10 million deal. But I think it makes the most sense for Kane to go to Buffalo. Just looking, Lindy Ruff coming in yesterday kind of solidified it for me. It just makes the most sense. He's from there. He'd be so familiar with that community. And again, this is a place he's never played before. So imagine the fanfare that he would have. And, they're welcoming you home. That's a big, good feeling for a lot of teams and a lot of players. So that's it for today. We think that Patrick Kane is going to sign with the Buffalo Sabres. Let me know what you think down in the comment section. Let me know if you think I'm onto something or if I'm crazy. Let me know what teams you think Kane may sign with. If you could, please hit the subscription button, hit the like button. You want to share the video, that would be awesome. But as we always do here at Clearing the Benches, let them know you're out there.